few minutes of his time. The CEO of the Attende Group, Marcin Petrokowski. He's finished his board service. He's moved on to take on the CEO role of a listed company. He's here today, and we just wanted to say thank you for your service to AmCham, your friendship, and we look forward to cooperating. It's a very small woman. So nice.
In your office
I will, definitely. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thank you very much. Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Marcin is, of course, he is already learning the idea that once you serve on the board, you never truly get away. We tap you. We just don't have to provide the free board dinners as much, just the breakfast. But thank you very much for joining us here, Marcin. It is a privilege that I have in my role to work with so many great people. And of course, the one thing we also have to accept is that people come and people go. There is a young lady sitting in the back who has snuck in to take advantage of a free breakfast. And our 18-year director of the American Chamber of Commerce in Poland. So say good morning to Dorota Dąbrowski-Winterscheid. And one of the things I always appreciate about Dorota is that she always kept her word. When she said she was going to kick my behind if I didn't do something, she would do that. And she also mentioned that she was leaving, that she would always take advantage of the free AmCham breakfast. And here she is. So a woman of her word, but it's great to see her here. I'd also like to recognize, in the spirit of continuity, our new managing director, Dominika Fox-Matalewicz, who is here with us. Dominika, please stand up. So Dominika is on week 2 at AmCham. And as the director, she was able to jump straight into Karpacz, into the deep water, and see what we do when we go out and meet the masses and meet our government partners. And so we're very pleased to have her here on board with us. And I'd also like to recognize the leadership of Marzena Drella, who, since Dorota's departure until Dominika was able to onboard with us and is getting up and running, provided outstanding leadership for our team. Kept the wheels running, and managed to make sure that we delivered outstanding advocacy and membership support during this time. And she has also taken on an additional role as the Director of Operations for the Chamber, which is a signal that we are going to do bigger things, still better things, and be very busy. So, Marzena, thank you for all your efforts during this last few months. Thank you. We got a lot to talk about today, a lot to unpack, both from Karpacz, but also in terms of the economic outlook and what we're really going to face in the coming 12 months. We have a lot of rosy outlooks, but I think our guests today are going to be able to shed some light on what the real issues are, what the real challenges are that we're facing going forward, and of course the opportunities that we hope to take advantage of. So I would ask my speakers to come up and join us as I kind of introduce them and give people a little bit of background for you. So Krzysztof Krawczyk is the head of the Warsaw office and a partner at CVC Capital Partners. They're a leading private equity and advisory firm, and he's a board member at their portfolio companies, PKP Energetyka and Żabka, among others. Dr. Eliza Przyjecka, she's the head of economic research at AmCham, as well as professor at SGH. And she's a member of the U.S. Poland Fulbright Board, and she's the one who provides us our outstanding data as we engage with our stakeholders. Konrad Slusarczyk, he is with Visa. He heads the Central European Government Engagement, and he's a noted expert on payment systems and knows how we're spending our money and hopefully why. He also has gained significant experience in the financial sector at the National Bank of Poland. And rounding out our group is Mariusz Milcharek. He's the regional director for Central and Eastern Europe at Amazon, and we often turn to him over the years on matters of EU business, e-commerce, and taxes, market transformation, and all these good things. So we have a lot of talent, intellect, and experience on the podium. I've asked all the speakers to keep their initial comments short because I'd like to cover a lot of ground and touch on a lot of topics and take advantage of having them here with us. So with that, I will sit down and we will get underway.
Pavel.
Oh, I skipped that page. The problem is, Pavel is so easy to overlook. So Pavel Gruza, of course, our dear friend, a great partner when he was at the Ministry of Finance, vice president at Polish Copper, one of the largest Polish investors in the United States, and also knows a thing or two about taxes. My apologies, Pavel. I probably just lost out on my next copper coin. Are we good? Okay. So I'd like to start off with Krzysztof Krawczyk, if I could. Krzysztof, I know you spent a lot of time down in Karpacz this last week, and I was wondering if you might just touch on a little bit about the mood and some of the issues at Karpacz, some of the reactions initially that people had. And I would also like to point out that I received the important statistics last night at the AmCham board meeting that over 3,500 Żabka hot dogs were consumed in the AmCham diner.
That's the highlight of the conference.
Indeed, probably it was, I'm sure, for many people. On the other hand, let me just add, by way of difference, when you come to the AmCham diner at Karpacz, you get hot dogs, you get coffee, good company. I was at MSPO in Kielce, which was a great show, fantastic exhibitor, strong American presence. But at lunchtime, I had to pay 50 zloty for a mediocre karkówka. I think next time I'll just bring the hot dogs from Żabka if I'm not able to join at Karpacz. But Krzysztof, we appreciate your support there, but if you could share with us kind of some of your initial takeaways as we go through this kind of first initial observation round of discussion.
Sure. I mean, as usually, Karpacz and previously Krynica is a great opportunity to interact with business community in the first place, and there's been a lot of exciting conversations, sometimes in sort of more closed setup, where people were sharing their views about the environment. Of course, the consumer is at the frenzy consumption spread. We see that there is a huge demand across sectors represented in these rooms. But I would say net, the mood was rather concerned about what are the underlying drivers of the economy. Three things were prominent in these discussions, not necessarily in the order of being raised, but first of all, the prices of energy and the challenge that the energy sector has had, which ultimately may be a challenge that the business needs to tackle. I mean, both local regulations as well as the ambitious goals of EU mean that there needs to be capital to support this transformation over the next couple of decades. And there was a huge concern that ultimately it will be business that will have to pay for it. The next point is what I'm sure everyone in this room is experiencing, which is the cost of everything is going up. Obviously, people are trying to transfer that on their ultimate pricing, but that leads to a spiral that may be a death spiral that some of us remember from early 90s, where access to raw material, access to components, you had to keep in mind that month by month the prices were dramatically going up. Hopefully we'll not get there, but it was clearly a concern of mostly private business that they start to lose control over the cost of goods sold. And last but not least, something that the group of people attending the dinner on the first night of Karpacz in diner access to workforce. Universally, everyone is experiencing that. That's something that can be managed, two ways. Automation, so investment, but these, will take time. But clearly, business is now looking at investing more capex to automate and replace workforce with machines, with robots. But the other thing that we try to err when meeting with the regulators was, why don't we relax some laws to allow people from abroad to get the jobs that are screaming here. We have a history of accommodating a lot of people from the eastern border. These people accommodate very well here. Let's work on the law, which we understand has been ready but sort of stopped, in order to ease at least one of these pains of sort of ability to deliver on the growing demand.
Thanks, Krzysztof. I think these are subjects that will probably pop up frequently in our discussion this morning. Elisa, if I might come to you, we mentioned the cost of everything going up. What is, from your outlook, the real kind of inflation threat? Are there any things that we might be missing out in our rosy outlook when we see the big top line numbers on growth?
Inflation is a regular phenomenon in the market economy. And the worst thing with that is the so much dynamically rising rate of inflation, which the business didn't get used to, or didn't have a time to get used to, as we had in the early 90s. So as the history shows us, the economy was developing so fast in that time because we had factors of production which could have been used in that time for developing. We were improving productivity and effectiveness of usage of capital as well as labor force. Today, we're faced with significantly different circumstances. While in the entire global economy, there is a rising debt, first of all, and so much rising supply of money. The question is, how does money come from? And the inflation is not so bad in some circumstances. First of all, people may spend more money for their needs, and they may improve their standard of living, so they feel comfortable and feel good with that situation. However, if we look at a more broader picture of that effect of inflation, or the fast rising rate, decreasing value of money, somebody may say that the business doesn't like that in the long term, and customers that will not like them in the long run, because they figure out that their wages and their treasure is decreasing, is reducing. So it's reaction from the side of central bank, what the developed countries do right now. And I'm not saying that we should increase the interest rate. I wish to say that loudly. However, we have our domestic circumstances for precisely designed reaction. Reaction in a very, very difficult time during the pandemic. Still, we are under the pressure of such a strong risk of uncertainty, which is the worst thing for business, as you probably know. On the one hand side, it design differently supply chains, and the my very lovely term for the current situation is crisis of reorganization, redefinition, and relocation of business. So many opportunities in the market, but lots of challenges in terms of supply of money.
Thanks, Elisa. Another subject that we've been talking a lot about in meetings all the way from the presidential palace down through Karpacz is, of course, the proposed Polish New Deal. And since there are a few tax issues in there and various things, but also how that might affect employers, raise employment costs, consumer spending, et cetera. If I might, Mariusza, ask you to kind of tackle that, if you have any kind of initial thoughts about the ability of business right now to, given current conditions, to really take on new tax loads and new labor costs, and what effect that might have both on our investors, but also on our workforce.
Thank you for throwing the most difficult question to me.
Oh, I've got more difficult ones. That's
Tony, appreciate that. No, but first, indeed, taxes in general as a topic was one more to two that Krzysztof noticed there. Probably we were on the same meetings, because I found apart from taxes, sustainability was by far number one, and that was kind of interesting observation that in this year, and I have a feeling that next year and years to come, it's going to remain that way, that business and also policymakers are discussing sustainability from all over places and different angles. And one observation here as well is that we as business, we have progressed a lot last 2 years. I mean, we had a sustainability breakfast, and all of our companies were clearly, talking about huge investments and commitment to climate goals. Whereas, and here I share the Krzysztof's view that there is so big uncertainty around Polish energy transformation, and I used to work for GE before, and I mean it's still the same. Discussion got stuck, and government really has no clear view where we're heading to. And the prices will certainly increase, and this is very concerning and alarming, energy prices for business and for us as citizens. So that's on sustainability. Taxes, indeed, I was participating in a breakfast with Minister Kościński. There were 3 deputy ministers as well present, so that is something noticeable and worth appreciating. So there were a number of positive things there, I must say, around VAT, e-invoicing, more clarity about this sort of issues. But on New Deal or Polish deal, actually more questions than answers, I would say. New question came in, like corporate tax, minimum corporate tax, it was called, 0.4% of the revenue. So it's very vague to us, for example, and what is even more frightening, there are no consultations. I mean, until 16th of September, so it's like nothing. So this is alarming, and I think Tony, it would be worth having this discussion with either Minister Kościński or Minister Czarnecki here with us also as AmCham companies. And the third element that was very much present in our discussions within AmCham dinner, but also on the panels, labor. You mentioned labor, access to labor, but also education. I would link to education and the need for change, for rapid reform, because access to labor is also linked to the fact that Polish, universities, but also technical schools and vocational training system is not prepared for the future. We see it as Amazon. We want to invest heavily in R&D in Poland. We are bringing new teams. We acquired the Ring company. We brought like 300 engineers from outside Poland, because there are not enough people here working on technologies of the future, like AI, like cloud computing, like data analytics or voice technology, you name it. I mean, there are really very few people. And of course, it's not easy to educate them. So that links to the not easy to, to have them in 2, 3, 4 years time. So that goes to the migration policy, right? That there is this reservoir of people across the border that we should be consciously targeting. When you look at the list of people in IT sector, especially countries like Belarus, Ukraine, Russia are on the top in the world. So it's really relatively easy to target and to have a conscious, good migration policy towards these people that we should, as business, call for in the coming years. Yeah, so these were, I think, 3 main topics there in Karpacz.
All right, well, thank you, Mariusz. I'm going to, since energy and energy diversification, energy pricing, sustainability, these issues have all been mentioned by the first few speakers. And so, Pavel, if I can turn to you, if you want, you can also, as a former deputy minister of finance, we can always direct all of our tax inquiries to you. But before we do that, we're all consumers in our businesses as individuals. We're all consumers of energy. We're all hopefully concerned about climate. We're all concerned about sustainability and what that means, not just for our businesses, but for our families, future generations. What do you see as kind of the big challenges and opportunities for Poland to work on its energy mix, move toward its climate goals, and still continue to grow the economy?
Thank you, Tony. Let me just say, I forgot everything I knew about taxes, so I can't help you with that. So, but on energy, I just want to give you our perspective. It's not energy itself. What's happening is we see our clients more and more concerned about the carbon footprint of their resource. Okay, so we're selling basically a commodity, a resource, very important for everybody. Which is copper. And the questions we are getting are how much carbon footprint is a ton of KGHM copper emitting. And this question translates into the energy mix we purchase. We have some of our own resources, but we see it as a huge, risk factor in terms of our revenues, in terms of the quality of copper we sell to the market. And this is the main reason we are interested in transforming ourselves. So we obviously have opened some renewable investments, but the amount of energy we consume, and just as a side note, we are number 1/number 2 consumer of energy in Poland. So we need a substantial amount of constant energy flow with low or minimal or zero carbon footprint. And this is why we turn to the idea of small nuclear reactors as a substitute, as a way of safeguarding the quality of our basically main product. We also are looking at hydrogen. We would like to substitute natural gas in our smelters for hydrogen. This is also cutting edge technology, which is, let's say, in development worldwide. So this is not something that it's off the shelf, ready to buy and implement. And we are also looking at low emission mine, which is also a hugely innovative concept where we don't use diesel underground, which is at least today considered safe and practical. So we have huge homework to do. It has been a roller coaster ride last 18 months, but we feel we came out much stronger out of this roller coaster, especially financially, and we're prepared to take on these challenges.
And Pavel, before I move on, I want to touch on one other thing, since you have particular insight on it, I think, in the role of the company, is we've seen a lot of disruption. There's been a lot of talk about the shortage of microchips and how that affects the automotive industry and various things. But also, I think underneath that, the important industrial metals and precious metals, that the disruption in the supply chain is also affecting those. Political instability can affect access to those. So how do you see, in addition to everything caused by the pandemic, do we untangle these knots in the supply chain in the near future, or is this something that business is going to have to learn to live with for the term?
Yeah, like the chips, we can't change our car fleet because of that. This is a practical issues that we're facing, and this, for me, it's just a mistaken economic policy that you have all the chips made in one part of one island in far Asia. So this is like a strategic mistake, and I hope politicians will make decisions that to relocate this type of strategic production into Europe or US, or spread it out all over the world. In terms of resources, there has been, I think, a mistake in over-regulating and making very hard to invest in mines, because the investment in a copper mine is like 5-7 years and $1 billion+. And with all the regulatory risk, it's very hard to create new resources. And we need copper for windmills, for all the renewable energy, for new grid, electrical grid. So there have been, I think, made mistakes. And in terms of the resources, at this point, we are in a situation where our clients come to us and ask for additional copper to be sent to them, and we just say there is not enough production from our side. We're at the maximum production level. So we are at the wall of, let's say, what we can output. Logistically, we're very fortunate. We send our products to China, so we're in a, let's say, contrary phase to the logistical problem. So I can't really touch on that.
Okay. Well, hopefully you'll keep sending stuff to China, and we'll get a little less stuff back from them. So yeah, that sort of a global commodities picture and the challenges and energy pricing, I'd like to turn to Konrad. And Konrad, in your view, as you look at Poland, but also in Central Europe, from your position, looking at the way money moves around between consumers, businesses, what lessons do you think we have learned as business has evolved and consumer patterns have evolved since the beginning of the pandemic, and what's here to stay and what might return back? So maybe some thoughts on the way money's moving around from your point.
Right, thank you, Tony. So perhaps before I jump right into the response, I'd like to raise a huge thank you for inviting us to AmCham family, Visa. I already feel like a 60-year-old child because this is the time we've been actually present on global markets, and yet we have not been involved, to my regret, to the work of AmCham. So I'm really pleased that it changed right now.
Happy to have you.
So responding to your question, that's true that we as Visa, as a global technology payment company, we've been observing a shift, changes in the trends of consumer behaviors especially, but also we've been observing and supporting how the entrepreneurs adjust to those changes. COVID pandemic obviously accelerated that to the highest possible amount. And we feel that the trend we're now observing, which I will just explain in a second, is something that will stay with us. There are twofold changes from our payment company perspective that are clearly visible, not only on Polish market, but I would say on all of the European ones, at least. So the one is the shift to contactless payments. Probably at the very beginning, this was a health factor, health issue here that followed this specific reaction of the consumers. But this is something that we as Poland have been leading for several years already. The other factor is actually e-commerce, and I'm pretty sure Mariusz would have a lot to say about it. We as Visa have been observing in Poland for the last year almost 35% increase in all the transactions on our cards, obviously, but this is the trend that also the national regulator, central bank, has indicated in their reports. And we have a strong feeling that this particular trend will stay with us for good, I would say. And this is actually being confirmed by other independent reports, like the central bank's one, which indicates that more than 70% of respondents of consumers stated that they do not intend to fall back from the habits of doing shopping online. So this is very promising, but of course, it, on the other hand, opens up a whole package of challenges, especially for small and micro entrepreneurs. From our service, it turns out that more than half of all European entrepreneurs are not ready to accept digital payments in e-commerce space. So this is a huge challenge for them. On one side, they have a clear customer demand they need to address. They definitely have or had their own challenges and problems during the last 2 years. And now they need to adjust to the new reality, which us as Visa, but also the rest of the payment sector is trying to support through the various number of initiatives, helping them out. SME sector is definitely a backbone of the economy, of all the economies in Europe. So this is, I would say, the trend that we have been observing, and something that we strongly try to strengthen, because they are responsible for more than 2/3 of employment rate and more than 50% of GDP, be it in Poland as in other countries. So this is my observation from the last year, I would say, but also it's something that we've been discussing with some of the stakeholders during Karpacz meeting, how to combine the over-regulated environment, especially in Europe as we face it, with a strong demand for digitization of the economy. I'm not even talking about the payments, I'm talking about digitization of the infrastructure, digitization of administration. So this is a bit of a clash that we are facing right now, but I think this is something we definitely cannot disclose like that. So this is the issue that will stay with us, and something very urgent to solve with the public administrations.
Thank you. One point I would just like to make out by comparison, how fortunate we are, as we go through our daily lives and business here in Poland, compared to the US, certainly is in the financial technology available to us. Just before the pandemic, I was in the US and I was with my teenage son, and he says, "Why is that lady writing a note at the checkout?" He had never seen a check written before. There was a lady getting her checkbook out and buying groceries, and he was curious. And I said, "It's kind of like an IOU." And he's like, "Wow, that's primitive." So thankfully we don't see checks. But on the other hand, I worked with a mission of Polish companies in 2018 to meet potential partners for their fintech in the US. So arranged some meetings, and the US company said, "Wow, sorry, we can't work with you." Mm-hmm. And the Polish company's initial reaction was, "What's wrong with our product?" They're like, "We're here, you're there. We have no technology bridge to get us to use your product for the foreseeable future." We're lucky that we're leading, so there's a lot of opportunity. But at the same time, as Konrad mentions, there's a lot of issues that we need to address as we move forward, as we digitize. It's maybe not as simple as we think. I'd like to also come to another kind of economic big picture question, and I'm going to ask Elisa to put on her dark hat. We're looking at some really amazing top line economic numbers and the projections that we hear from the government, from the European Commission. How real are these rosy numbers? And if you were to give us a reality check, what would your numbers be for real economic growth, taking into account inflation and all sorts of other things? I know it's a crystal ball question, but I think that a little reality check is in order.
So as the research and the number says that we had a turning point in the crisis between the second and the third quarter of 2020. So this is far away. And definitely, we are on the path of growth. There is rising GDP and industrial production, particularly, which force the economy on that path. However, this is not the spring yet, because another research says that the manufacturing and the industrial processes are on the start, stop, start mode. This is like the roller coaster again, but which is created by, first of all, still a huge uncertainty, inflation, and a couple of macroeconomic issues, but at the micro level, a very huge risk with regards to the availability of labor, which actually is one of the greatest elements which hold the business, which doesn't let companies in industrial manufacturing as well as services to growth as they can, as they are able to. This is one of the aspects which need to be considered with regards to the immigration policy, with regards to the cost of labor, and that administrative cost of employment. The second point is the rising cost of energy, which actually was echoing around us in Karpacz all the time. That element, what probably is seen in the most of businesses, will highly affect the growth within the next years. And the last but not least, the new organization of the cooperation with foreign partners and the reorganization of supply chains. That kind of uncertainty coming from the side of the long distance partners, linkages, would definitely affect the most of businesses in Poland as well as in other countries. So some pretty optimistic numbers which were given us by the representatives of the PAI in Karpacz said that we go for record this year. They expect a really enormous and significant amount of foreign capital coming into the country, reaching around $20 billion this year. Yesterday, we have found in the press release information about really huge record of $80 billion investment by Intel in chip production factories, which might be located in Poland. It's not decided yet, but our attractiveness were highly valued by that business. So it really gives us pretty optimistic expectations, but we still need to be pretty comfortable in our situation and count on stability in legislation, count on and expect more predictabilities, more time for getting used to that enormous situation in the economy.
Thanks, Elisa. Krzysztof, you participated in a number of the discussions at Karpacz. If you were to drill down in any of those subjects, I mean, do you see some steps that we as a business community can maybe find some traction forward with our political stakeholders to address some of these issues? given that you were kind of eye to eye with people having some of these discussions, what do you see as some of those action items that came away from your conversations there, so we can address some of these bigger issues, at least for a starting point?
Well, if you compare the quality of dialogue years, actually it was a year when the dialogue was avoided. Obviously, we had a lot of one-on-ones, but didn't really have a robust discussion with the representatives of public administration or regulators. They would come, have a face-to-face and say, hey, let's make sure that we keep the relationship strong. But in terms of pushing certain agendas, I think we are a little bit on a freeze, which is unfortunate. I think the flip side is that the business, both business present in this room as well as the broader private business, feels that there is a lot we can do ourselves. So there is a sense of accountability for ESG. ESG is no longer a rubber stamping exercise. People see that it's actually part of the way to make the business sustainable. So it needs to be in the core of the strategy. So I think what we can do is really bring ESG up in terms of understanding that's the way for the business to continue being successful over the next decade, 2 decades, etc. Hopefully, at some point, it will be recognized that we are an important stakeholder, and we sort of need to have a dialogue in order for the country to flourish. Again, one point that in all conversations was echoed was the problem with workforce access. And I think AmCham as an organization could try to reignite the effort, because again, I understand there was a consensus around allowing Belarusians, Ukrainians, people that are sort of from similar cultures to get the jobs that are again empty far easier. So that's
Well, I think that one of the challenges that we have when we not only try to talk about the policy, making sure that skilled workers, the right people are available, is that we're still fighting that battle occasionally alongside our partners at the U.S. consulate and the commercial services. They weigh in on this as well. That each province, each voivodstvo seems to be its own island in terms of deciding how efficiently they process, whether they recognize skilled workers, critical workers, or whether they just take the engineer you need to come for 1 year for a project and put it behind everybody else to process them. And so this is a bit of a problem, but that's a tactical problem. We also need to work on addressing this strategic problem of policy. I'm going to put Pavel on the spot a little bit, since he's the energy and materials guy and knows almost everything. But because energy is important, but also because industry is important, one of the things when we do talk about U.S. investment here in Poland, there's so much focus on the technology side of it, the R&D side of it, and that is great and that is true. But sometimes people overlook the fact that our advanced manufacturing footprint here in Poland is massive. So it's not just the stuff that takes place in the servers and the ether and the digital space. Our companies here, our investors here, are making products for global supply chains, critical, high-skilled products. And we have heard talk over the last few years, since the very start of the Responsible Development Plan, that Poland wants to develop as an advanced manufacturing hub and possibly as an energy hub. Since Pavel consumes a lot of energy, makes a lot of stuff with his company, but just if you have any thoughts on what are some of the key maybe challenges to that, and but what do you see as the benefits of kind of realizing that for Poland to be this hub on advanced manufacturing, as well as having a better energy mix and use to attract that?
Sure, thanks. In terms of advanced manufacturing, I think this is a question of the workforce and the quality of engineers, which we have, and we can build on that. And I think if we don't mess up something in the tax code or regulations, we are in very good position to achieve these goals. But in terms of the energy hub, you know, Poland, in its disadvantage, being, you know, coal-oriented for so many decades, because of you have to look back at Soviet times. It was a political decision to prevent Poland from developing nuclear energy and nuclear potential. Even Hungarians, even you know, Czech and Slovak have nuclear energy. It was a political decision to prevent Poland from obtaining nuclear capacity for also military reasons. And we are with this legacy here, and we have a potential of being a poster child for transition. And I think this potential is still to be, you know, utilized, and we can be an example for the world to how to pull yourself up with your bootstraps and just make a leap towards a totally new realm. So we still have this potential, and I hope we will you know, make best of it.
Well, I think I think it's time to be ambitious as opposed to just trundle along, because the energy mix is going to change, and I think it's better to be in front of the train driving it than chasing it from behind. Conrad, if I might come back down to the other end of the table on you, you know, if we move from advanced manufacturing and the energy hub to thinking, one of the discussions I've had with people in public sector, you know, is you see a way for the payments system and our ability to work between citizens and government. Do you think there's how do we move forward so that there's more acceptance, more embrace of using the same payment methods we use in everyday life with public sector? You know, it's very frustrating at times to you know, not be able to do that, to have to do things. Do you think there's an appetite for that? Because when we look at efficiencies, when we look at some of the great steps, digitalizing appointments, when you go in, you don't have to wait all day now to get your new license and registration. You make an appointment, you do all this stuff online. Why can't we pay for more things online the way we do everywhere else?
That's a good question, Tony. You're very right that I would say both sides of the fence are very eager to digitalize the economies more. However, there's still an issue how to do it bilaterally, how to do it in collaboration. In certain markets, like unfortunately our markets, there's a certain level of, I would say, a mist between the private sector and the public sector, and some level of cooperation is definitely something we still need to develop. I often compare our way of doing business, or at least collaborating with the public sector, with the one our colleagues in the US are doing. This kind of lobbying or collaboration type is definitely something else in our two markets, and there's still a way forward to, I would say, establish more standardized, more civilized rules for that. I would say this is one of the issues we are facing. The other one is what we already expressed, overregulation, generally speaking, in Europe. There's a huge tendency of European policymakers to regulate almost every sphere of economic and social life. And sometimes this is, maybe not even sometimes, more often than never, it's a huge barrier for developing innovations and technologies to thrive. We know that technologies are more likely to drive the changes in the economy, in the society, and the regulation is just stepping forward, trying to catch up, which is rather inefficient way of doing that. However, this is the situation that we are facing, and we need to live with that. As for our market, I would say we have already a couple of great examples of public-private collaboration, one of which, especially in my area, the Cashless Poland Foundation initiative, which proved to be very successful, very efficient way of helping out the merchant society, the entrepreneur society, but also the consumers with the collaborative work of public and private sector. And this is actually something we've been very proud and spreading a good gospel all around our markets. And I think a best use case that we can use for other developments in this sphere. If I may comment on two things which have been already expressed here, I definitely recognize two issues which have been the topics of our discussion here and in Karpacz. One being something which I called ethical one, which is sustainability, ESG. A certain level of interest of this topic, which I think for especially our region here, so not only Poland, but also other countries of this region, are not as high on the political agenda as it is for Western Europe, for instance. I have this feeling that sometimes our governments are just trying to deal with political demand stemming from European Union, but trying to collaboratively work with a private sector, which already is doing a great job in this sphere. And the other one is a societal issue, which is the financial education. According to many surveys or polls, young Polish people, even though being a bit higher in the average ratings than their teenager fellows from other countries, still are lacking behind with a proper financial education. And this is actually what keeps them behind starting on a certain level of preparedness to the real work. And I think this is still an area where we can definitely try to steer a bit our public sector partners.
Super, thank you, Konrad. Many years ago, when I was actually a high school student, Lyceum student, we were required to take a class called Home Economics. And you learned things like balancing a checkbook. You went to the grocery store and did simulated shopping, and many of us were shocked to find out how much it cost to fill up a basket of food. And then you sort of felt sorry for mom and dad a little more. But I think these are some of those very basic things that we've gotten away from a little bit, and maybe we need to do again. Mariusz, I'm going to want to round back off with you. Amazon's made big investments here in Poland. It's growing. But as you look, how do you see from your perspective, we have the effects of Brexit. We have the idea of localizing, getting closer to customers. How does that fit? Where does Poland fit into all of that, vis-a-vis European markets, and really what is the impact of Brexit on trade? I mean, disruption, things going there, coming here, and do you see continued benefit for Poland in that?
Benefit for Poland is third hub, meaning logistic hub, in addition to manufacturing and energy, as you mentioned, and we believe in this story because last year only we invested heavily in Poland, created 6,000 additional jobs. So overall, we have 23,000 jobs, permanent jobs in Poland. And when you talk about reaching to customer, we opened a marketplace, local marketplace here in March, so Amazon PL, and also enabling Polish small and medium-sized enterprises to go global through Amazon, to export products more easily, with Polish service and FBA, as we call it, so fulfillment by Amazon, meaning that they can actually outsource everything to Amazon and reach out to customers all over the globe, literally. So that's something that pandemic, I would say, accelerated. Accelerated e-commerce, as Konrad mentioned. On some markets, it was 40%, on some 20% growth. But that's the trend actually that should remain. According to the latest PwC report, from 12 to 20% growth every year is expected. So for us, what does it mean? Of course, growth. I mean, we hope to grow in Europe and all, on other markets as well. In Poland, as we already discussed, there are some bottlenecks for this growth. But at the same time, we really regard Poland as an important country, which may work as a hub, logistic hub for Europe, not only Central Eastern Europe, with Gdańsk port, very important one, direct connection to China, trade connection to Asia. It's really something that we hope to utilize further and even more. On digitalizing economy, maybe one word here, because e-commerce is also speeding up digitalization of small and medium-sized enterprises as well. So they need to go from traditional way of selling to also multi-channel or to convert into e-commerce, and many did last year actually. And that was also something noticeable, and this will continue. But at the same time, talking about regulations, we have lots of new regulations that are kind of, again, trying to ring fence digital economy. I'm talking about, Digital Markets Act or Digital Services Act. Whereas companies like traditional retail, like Walmart, for example, in the US, is huge e-commerce company now. Or, Żabka is also very much e-commerce. So Carrefour, you name it. I mean, traditional retailers are becoming e-commerce. E-commerce are also going into traditional retail, like Amazon has over 500 retail offline stores already. So that's but at the same time, regulations are kind of, trying to, as I said, group, photograph big players on digital market and regulate them more than the rest of the economy. And this is not going to, lead to further innovation, right? And also may hamper a lot of small and medium-sized enterprises from growing further, because they would need to, apply a lot of kind of requirements to share data, for example, and data are today's fuel of growth for many of these companies. So that's something, maybe not for today to discuss in depth, but digitalization of economy, all sectors are going digital, and that's, I mean, needless to say, it's no-brainer. But there is this rising threat of, again, over-regulating here in Europe, whereas other markets outside Europe are simply keep on growing.
However, if I may comment one thing here, unfortunately, other markets like Asian ones are trying to accommodate the same regulation that is visible in Europe, like interchange regulation for or others. So this is definitely a good trend that they are following suits the European over-regulated market. Just an observation.
Well, so I think the thing I would take away from this discussion today is that many of the issues that we're talking about, we hear the word convergence a lot these days, but everybody is affected or moving in the digital direction. We all have concerns or real issues with labor availability, either now or for our continued growth. We all have challenges with the possibility of future or existing overregulation. And we all need to have a small modular nuclear reactor at our own businesses so we don't have to worry about energy costs. But I think but to me, it's interesting because, not that many years ago, it was very easy to get together and the industrial people talked about this issue, the banking people and finance people talked about this issue, and on, very, very much siloed. And today It's interesting. You take a diverse group of people from diverse industries and observations, and many of the key themes are emerging. And they might affect us in different ways, but in a way, as AmCham and representing membership and business and growth, it makes our work a little easier because we have some common points that everyone can agree on. And then we can get down to the individual sectors. So thank you very much for highlighting those issues today. Thank you for coming out and sharing your time and expertise with us, everybody. And thank you all for coming out and having breakfast and braving the first AmCham meeting in person in over a year. So please join me in thanking our speakers today, and thank you all for coming. So
Both, you say